Travis with another video for you guys today. So today is going to be a little more of a rehab type video because I'm a doctor of physical therapy and working with patients for a little while. They tend to ask me a lot of questions about what they can do when they're not as ambulatory. In other words, they're not able to walk around as easily. So maybe they're a high fall risk because of things that impacted their balance, or they're just really weak from a lengthy hospitalization, or they just kind of had some medical issues that haven't allowed them to really move around a lot, and so they've become kind of deconditioned. And as a result, their body's also kind of getting weaker. So they're sort of getting hit from both sides. They just kind of have a medical issue going on, and then there's this deconditioning that's kind of coming in just because they're having to lay around a lot. And so even if you're, kind of somebody who's more confined, to a bed, or maybe, nurses are just getting you up to a chair, or caregivers getting you up to a chair, there's definitely some things you can start working on to get yourself stronger. Many of the principles in some of the other videos I've been showing, you can still kind of apply, but I'm going to more kind of explicitly go through how to do that in this video today. So for some of you that are a little higher level, this video may not be, the one for you. But that being said, if you know somebody, a friend or a relative who's a little weak, maybe you can show them this. So I'm going to be mostly using these things called TheraBands today. These are these more ribbon style bands. I have a few down here as well. They come in a variety of different colors, just like those Perform Better bands that I used in the other videos. Yellow tends to be the easier one, and then it goes red, green, blue. Most of the time, if you find yourself in a hospital setting, they typically don't carry stronger than blue. If they do, and you can use it, then obviously more power to you. For those of you though really looking to get stronger beyond these bands, you may want to consider switching to these, the Perform Better Super Bands that I show in some of the other videos. But these definitely can start to get the ball rolling as far as getting a little bit of strength. And so there's a few principles with them I'm going to start by showing you guys. The other thing is I'll try to see if I can insert kind of some time stops in this video today for those of you who want to cut straight to different parts of the video. But as far as the introduction is concerned, basically with these bands, the way they work, the farther apart your hands are, the easier they'll tend to be. And when you have your hands closer together, it's going to be harder because it's going to put that band on more tension. For any of you that have issues with your grip, you can always wrap your hands on any of these exercises as well to take some pressure off them. So you can always wrap one or both hands if you want to take some pressure off your grip. Now, if that's still difficult for you to do, you can always ask somebody maybe to help you, depending on what kind of hand issues you may have. They can always just tie a knot on one end of this, and then that way you have kind of a little bit of a loop on the end to put your hand in, and sometimes that might work for you as well, okay? Now, different patients, sometimes depending on what you're up against, you may have different precautions as well. So different patients who've had, say, a cabbage procedure, if they opened up your breastbone, you might be on sternal precautions. Different types of hip replacement surgery, you might have hip precautions where they don't want you, flexing your knee too high or turning your leg in or things. So you definitely want to clear what your precautions are if you have any, if you find yourself in a hospital setting, with your orthopedist, your doctor, make sure that nothing like this will violate your precautions. I'll be talking a little bit about some ways to try to get around some of them, but obviously I'm not going to be able to cover all the different precautions that are out there. So, if you're mostly just up against weakness, generalized weakness from bed rest, I think these exercises should work for many of you, but again, you definitely want to clear it up. Okay, so the first exercise I'm going to show you guys is going to be for the triceps, which are the muscles in the back of the arm above the elbow. Again, I put another tricep video out for those of you who are a little higher level. But a real basic way to do this, and I actually showed this again with the those little loop bands that I had, those mini bands. But with one of these, what you want to do is just kind of tack one hand in front of your chest and do kind of a karate chop movement like this, okay? And so as you're straightening your elbow against that resistance, you're really engaging that tricep, okay? And your triceps are big muscles when it comes to pushing down on the canes and walkers and crutches, even wheeling yourself around in a wheelchair, certainly scooting around in bed, or even getting out of a chair if it has armrests. And so again, I just usually tack this against the front of my chest, someplace that's just kind of secure. And again, if I want to put a little more tension on it, hands a little closer together, easier would be farther apart, okay? And once again, don't forget, you can always wrap those hands to take some pressure off your grip, okay? And then definitely want to do both sides as well, so then you would just switch and then do the other side. For any of you who are up against a little more weakness, so, for instance, if you can do 20 on one side, with a moderate amount of fatigue, but then on the other side you can barely get 5, well then definitely, do some extra rounds on that weak side. At least some extra reps, maybe even an extra round or two. But you can certainly space it out. So, feel free to, do whatever you can muster, rest for a minute or two or whatever you need, or even maybe later on that day, come back to it and maybe see if you can get a double dose or a little extra on that weak side for those of you who have it. But again, those are triceps, pretty big players when it comes to assisting people with their mobility. particularly again using canes, walkers, crutches, all that type of thing, rolling and scooting around in bed. Okay, alternate way you can do the triceps. I'll show this one for those of you who like it. Some people like this variation more than the last one I just showed. Obviously it's optional. For anybody who just had a neck procedure, certainly any neck incisions though, you want to be really careful and probably do the first exercise. Anybody with any sensitivity around the neck as well, you certainly can always put a pillowcase or a towel to cushion this up. But basically what you want to do is get it around your shoulders. And now you don't want it on the neck so much, you want to try to get it more in what I call the suspender position. So you want to get the tension more across the belly of this upper trapezius muscle here. And as long as you keep a little downward pressure on it, that should help it to stay fairly well secured in place. And once you have it there, now you can just go ahead and pull that guy down, very similar to the way we did the last exercise, where now I'm able to do both sides at a time. Okay? And certainly though, if you like this position, you could do one side at a time from this spot as well. Okay? And again, the way to make this one easier would be closer to the bottom, or a little stronger by going closer towards the top. And once again, certainly can wrap the hands if you want to take a little pressure off the grip. So all the same things would apply as the last one. Again, canes, walkers, crutches, anytime you're pushing down as you're wheeling around in a wheelchair, or again, rolling and scooting in bed, and all those types of things. Okay, next exercise is a really fantastic one for the muscles kind of in the back of the shoulder. Muscles we sort of call your scapular retractors, and the muscles, medial to some degree, but mostly posterior, or the kind of rear deltoid as we call it. And so the traditional way you'll do this exercise, you'll see people do it, is they take their palms down and they sort of pull this thing apart into their chest, okay? And so for that reason, we tend to call this exercise a pull apart, okay? And it's just a nice exercise to work those muscles and kind of the back of the shoulder blade. Because many people who have difficulty with mobility and walking tend to be very reliant on canes and walkers and crutches or wheeling around in a chair, they're always kind of engaging their pushing muscles, which are the muscles more on the front here. And so you want to kind of have good pull on both sides of the fence. And so if you're always giving a lot of attention just to these muscles, you can start to run into some shoulder issues, as some of you might be able to attest to. So it's nice to work the muscles kind of on the other side of that fence to give your muscles some balance, hopefully prevent you from running into shoulder issues, but definitely can also support some of the other activities you may be needing to do that require some upper body strength, okay? So once again, typically the traditional way you'll do this is palms down, pull this thing apart. If you can't quite get it all the way to your torso, then whatever you can manage. If you need to do it out here a little bit, that's fine. For those of you who have any shoulder issues, or for some reason, again, sternum precautions, and you can't want to put a lot of force across that breastbone, you can hold this one a little closer to you as well, okay? And traditionally, the way I'll do that one, if I'm going to do it closer to my body, I'll also turn my palms up for that one, okay? And that does a nice job kind of turning my shoulder out a little bit into what we call external rotation. So here I am, and I can kind of keep this a little closer to my body. That way I'm not putting as much torque across my breastbone, or maybe any sensitivity I have in my rib area. Because if somebody had, say, some rib fractures or something, being way out here probably would be pretty uncomfortable. Maybe if you come down in here, you might be able to do this in a way where you can, get the muscle to work without feeling too much of that discomfort. Okay, obviously if it doesn't work for you though, then you may not be able to do that exercise depending on the issues you're up against. Okay, now, no reason though why you have to only do this one close though. If you're feeling pretty good, you can do palms up as well and have it kind of outstretched across. Okay. Now the one caveat I will mention about pull aparts, for those of you who don't have maybe an excellent mind-muscle connection, sometimes it's hard to really engage the muscles you're interested in. So many times when I see people doing a traditional pull apart, they're kind of shrugging their shoulders, or they're really engaging those upper trapezius muscles. So to the extent you can, just make sure you don't have your shoulders, up by your ears. Kind of keep them more pushed down, not hard down, but just don't let them ride up as you kind of pull this thing apart. Kind of keep them down, but sort of pull those shoulder blades back as your hands come apart. Okay, and to help kind of decrease that recruitment of the upper trapezius even more, if you're still feeling it a lot there, jerk those palms up and pull it a little bit low. So sometimes you pull it low, kind of almost like by your belly button. That'll engage these muscles a little bit more and kind of take these out of the mixture. So many patients that I've shown this to can do this a little bit more effectively, that tend to recruit those upper trapezius by having their palms up. Okay? And so once again, don't forget, just like the other one, you can certainly wrap your hands on this one as well if you need to take a little pressure off the grip. And once again, closer together with your hands, it's going to be a little stronger. Farther apart would be a little bit easier. And that's the one we call pull-aparts. So another good little duo of exercises you can do with this thing are for kind of your rowing and your elbow flexing muscles. So all you have to do with this thing is just take it by its ends, and then lasso it around one of your feet if you can, okay? You can certainly also use a bed railing or some sort of a post, you know, that you might have in your home, or again, if you're in a hospital setting, the bed railing sometimes might have a hole in it. So you certainly could anchor this thing around something else. But many times, you know, assuming that, you know, your legs are in the condition for it, lassoing this thing around your foot is fine. Just not so much by your toe, because sometimes if you do that, it'll slip out on you. So many times I'll try to get people to go a little closer towards the heel on this one. You may need to inch yourself forward a little bit as well. So, you know, if you don't have any balance issues and you've got pretty good trunk stability, you can scoot forward maybe just a hair. From there, you're going to keep your elbows in the same spot and bring the ends of that band toward you. So this is a curl, okay? And just like all those other exercises, I can do one side at a time, okay? Or again, I can just go continuously on one until that arm's out of gas, switch and then do the other, and that's certainly fine to do it that way, okay? And wrapping those hands is certainly fair game, as is grabbing this thing a little bit lower to put a little more tension on it if you need it, okay? But once again, to slacken it up, just go closer to those ends, okay? And so if my elbows don't move, we can call that a curl. But another cool variation you can do is if you do move your elbows and you pull them back, then that turns that same exercise into a row, okay? And if you find this is kind of running into your thighs and you don't like the way that feels, if you have the strength for it, you can hold that leg up there and do that exercise. And that's fair game as well. Many times though, I'll just show it on the floor because the leg's a little more relaxed in that position. And so it's just kind of a little easier to concentrate on what the upper body's doing. But for those of you who are a little more fit, you know, if you want to hold that leg up there and that allows you to get some more leverage on it, you certainly can, okay? And all the same rules will still apply. Some of you are going to probably realize that you're not going to be quite as strong when you curl as when you row. So if you're going to use the same band, if you don't have more than one, you might want to put just a little more tension on it, grab it a little bit lower when you're going to do that rowing exercise, okay? And this is just a standard horizontal row. For those of you that want to know a little bit more about rowing, you can check out my other, you know, I have kind of a back rowing video, and that one I do show some other modifications to a straightforward horizontal row. But this one covers some pretty good bases, really gets the lats, you know, getting those scapular retractors, which are some good muscles that can help support, you know, a lot of that pushing exercise that I talked about earlier, okay? And again, biceps, you know, not so much really functional muscles from a mobility standpoint, but they do lend a lot of support to the triceps, which you tend to have to utilize a lot. So not a bad idea to work your biceps some. Can also perhaps maybe prevent you from running into some elbow issues if you're really engaging those triceps all the time. So pretty cool exercises, and I would encourage you to try to add those to the rotation if you can. Okay, so the last one I'm going to throw at you with the band, at least for the upper body today, is a pretty cool exercise. It's basically a chest press. Now, for anybody that has any sensitivity around the low back, certainly any recent incisions, you know, rib injuries or skin sensitivity, just try to get this thing behind a chair. If you have a chair back, and you can always get somebody to give you a hand with that. But if you get it behind a chair, it should be pretty well secured in place once you have it here. Depending on, again, on if you have any lines connected or anything, you might want to watch out for that. I tend to like to take it, you know, between the body and the arm like this, just because it's less pressure as I do this. But there is a way you can also do it kind of up here for those of you that don't mind having maybe a little bit of pressure in your arms and can do it that way, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and show it sort of down here, close to my body. And as far as the muscles are concerned, it's pretty similar, okay? And this is the movement we call a chest press, okay? So as you know, you can definitely come just straight ahead with this one. That's going to put a little bit more of the work on just those deltoid muscles as well as your triceps. If you give it a little bit of a hug though, as you're pushing it, so you kind of try to bring your hands together a little bit, that does a nice job really asking that chest muscle to have to kick in on this one. So generally the way I'd recommend is just try to squeeze a little bit as you straighten those arms, okay? And that's just a nice way to work, again, the pecs, the shoulders, the triceps, so a lot of those big players in the front of your upper body. Again, a lot of your cane, walker, and crutch muscles, just like when we were working the triceps earlier. So a pretty good bang for your buck exercise. Definitely one I would encourage you to keep in the rotation if you're looking for a little bit more upper body strength in those departments, okay? And once again, just to make sure you're clear on this, you know, certainly you could do one side at a time, okay? And you definitely can also experiment with the angles a little, okay? So for some of you that are pretty weak, if you have armrests, you can even just kind of slide your arms across the armrests if that's the way you have to start, if you're feeling pretty weak right now. But eventually you might be able to hopefully get to where you're doing kind of a more straightforward press like this, okay? And so that again is the chest press. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk about the lower body a little bit. Just three maybe basic movements you can incorporate that can add a little bit of strength to the legs, okay? So if you're having some issues walking, definitely the calves have been shown to be pretty important muscles when it comes to that. And so the calves, again, are the ones we tend to call the gastrocnemius and soleus, which are these ones down in here. And so a simple way you can try to work those muscles, the most basic way would be to just try and do some good old-fashioned heel raises, okay? So point the toes down and lift those heels up as high as you can. See if you can sort of flex and squeeze that muscle a little bit at the top right before you set it down, okay? And so that's a pretty basic way to get some attention there. Also helps quite a bit with circulation. They tend to call this your second heart because it really helps that blood sort of return up to your heart. Blood clots are certainly something to not be underestimated when you're in the hospital. So this will also help a little bit with circulation. Now, once you start to get to a phase where you feel like this feels pretty easy, you can also take your hands and push down a little bit into the top of your thighs to put a little more pressure on those calves, okay? So if you're having some issues with your balance, I probably wouldn't say try this standing up, at least not unless you have some help. But you can definitely put some pretty good arms into it. That's cool because you kill two birds with one stone. So then you're getting some triceps as well as a little bit more pressure on those calves, okay? So you can put some pretty good arms into it, make it pretty tough, or you just go kind of soft, just medium pressure or light pressure depending on how you're feeling, okay? For those of you that have back precautions or a situation where you've been told not to bend forward so far, just make sure you're not necessarily leaning into it then. Hopefully you can just kind of figure out a way to kind of sit back and put a little bit of pressure, and that won't be quite as much as if you kind of put some body weight into it, but at least it'll give you a little more load on that muscle. So that's for the calves, which can help quite a bit with walking. Okay, so after that we can move up here to these big thigh muscles we have here called the quadriceps. Now I went ahead and I took one of those TheraBands and I tied it in a loop. So again, you can always just take one of these if you have the loose ends and just kind of tie it a knot on one end and then put that loop around your thighs. And so that's what I've done here with this red band. And then from there, you can just do some leg extensions, okay? And that way you're gonna put a little bit more on these muscles. These muscles can typically take quite a bit of punishment. They're some of the larger muscles we have because they tend to have to move our whole body weight around. Now obviously if you're at a phase where you're weak and even just lifting the knee is a tall order, then certainly you can start there. But if you wanna try to put a little bit more resistance in the mixture, then I would say try this with the band. Sometimes, as the TheraBands more than the pre-made loops tend to kind of roll up on you like this one has here. So, having some pants or some socks on can hopefully help protect your skin a little bit. Or just, put a towel in between it too to kind of buffer your skin. But this is definitely pretty good for the quad. And so again, you can alternate. If you have a weakness on one side, definitely can do some extra on that weak side, whichever one it is. And that's again a good one for your thigh muscles, which we call your quadriceps. The last one for the legs. So if you have that band that's made in a loop like I just showed in the quadriceps, you can put this thing around your thigh. Okay, and you could do this sitting in a chair. Definitely you don't have to, though. It's certainly optional depending on where you're at strength-wise. Now, a way you can also incorporate a little bit of core work with everything I've shown today is if you sit up a little tall. So if your back is against your backrest, that doesn't tend to engage your core muscles quite as much. But if you get your back a little bit off the backrest, now you're going to put a little bit of a higher demand on those muscles. So as long as you have good trunk control and it's secure to do that, you can try. And then from there, just kind of dial that position in, and then you can try and do just a little bit of a march in the chair, okay? And if anyone had hip precautions, sometimes you don't want to bend your knee up beyond 90, so obviously that would be something to clear with your orthopedist. But if I was sitting higher or I had my legs out a little farther, I might be able to keep that below 90 and still do that. So if you're there and you could, then certainly more power to you. But for some of you, that one might be a tall order, just lifting the leg itself without any resistance, or even without lifting your chest off the backrest. So you can always slice that accordingly and kind of regress or progress depending on how you're doing. But again, that's just a nice way to get a little core work as well as kind of some hip flexor work, okay, for these muscles in your midsection. Okay, so that was just my 2 cents on how you can do some that are basically the same movements people are doing in the gym. So doing the chest press that I showed earlier, doing the leg extensions, all that stuff. Those are a lot of the bread and butter exercises that many people do in commercial gyms. So they certainly get you strong. This is just kind of some ways to regress this stuff with a band, but it can be a nice building block to getting you kind of back to strength, getting you back to walking and doing all the things that you're hopefully going to be getting back to. I hope this stuff will help you. Feel free to comment below. At some point, I'll probably be doing a part 2 to these just to show you some more things you can do kind of in a basic chair like this. But I'll also add some content for those of you who are higher level and want some ideas there as far as working out at home with some of the super bands. So stay tuned, and as usual, I will put the links to these products I've been using at the bottom for those of you that want some help finding them, and I hope you guys have some fun.